Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll call this regular town meeting or regular meeting of the town council to order. Would you please all join me in a pledge of allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic under which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Dombrowski,
Here.
Mrs. Ingles,
Here.
Mr. Irwin. I don't see him. He was here
He
earlier.
was here earlier.
Mr. Marshall,
Here.
Mrs. McGrattan. Mary, what, Mrs. McGrattan?
She's
Oh,
on
she's
mute.
here, but she,
You-
okay.
I'm
Mr.
here.
Paul? I got it. Mr. Paul,
Here.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Here.
Mr. Ryan,
Here.
Mr. Psalm. I've got 7 here and 2 absent.
Okay,
Oh, here's Counselor Irwin.
okay,
So we've got 8 here and absent.
okay, very good. I have no presentations. At this point, I'll open the floor to resident and property owners who would like to address the council. I will ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you. Anybody like to address the council? Mr. Woody?
Thank you. And Roxanne, I'll send you a written copy of my comments afterwards. I've returned to speak regarding the failure of this council to reappoint Ms. Evans as an alternate to the PCC. The 2 alleged Facebook posts that Ms. Ingles used as grounds to unfairly deny Ms. Evans' appointment found their way to me, and I have forwarded them to the council because they need to be addressed, and the public deserves a response on this. There are 2 screenshots, one where Ms. Evans states towns have used planning and zoning boards for decades to keep minorities and affordable housing out of their towns, and a second discussing the lack of and need for affordable housing. Ms. Ingles stated these statements are disqualifying because Ms. Evans called someone bigoted without defending that statement, and statements from a zoning official can cause legal liabilities. Where to start? First of all, Ms. Evans did not state she was a zoning official. A zoning commissioner and a zoning official are different things. Ms. Evans correctly states she's a local commissioner. Second, Ms. Evans did not call anyone bigoted because they have a different opinion. The fact that zoning has been a tool for racial and socioeconomic segregation is quite possibly the worst kept secret in land use. The problem of racism in zoning was originally recognized in a 1917 Supreme Court decision which outlawed explicitly racial zoning. Other decisions in the following decades culminated with the 1968 passing of the Fair Housing Act, which was updated as recently as 2020 as we continue to try to stamp out implicitly racial zoning in housing. I forwarded a 2021 report from the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities titled Connecticut Zoning and Discrimination, as well as a timely article from the January 2022 issue of the American Planning Association, which talks about the history of racial bias in zoning. While there can be robust discussion about how to address these problems, the history of explicit and implicit racism in zoning remains fact. I'm sorry if this history upsets Ms. Ingles, but zoning commissions in towns can only do better if we know our history. Regarding affordable housing, I forwarded our own POCD, which this council voted unanimously to approve. It explicitly states the need for alternative and affordable housing will require updated regulations for the town to evolve. The most recent regional POCD and 2018 housing report also addressed the regional need for affordable and rental housing. I sent both of these to you as well. The comments that commissioners need to be careful about what they say to avoid legal liability and that they act as judges, not activists, is at best confused. The updates to the zoning enablement statute require zoning commissions and their regulations to affirmatively support the Fair Housing Act. The new training requirements, which I've also sent, have mandatory training requirements for affordable and fair housing. There is no legal liability for a commissioner being supportive of fair housing. An interesting question is whether there is legal liability for a town council that attempts to silence a commissioner because of their support of fair housing. Commissioners need to act as judges when they are acting administratively on an application, not when discussing planning policy or acting legislatively to update regulations so that they comport with legislation or town policy. No accusation of predisposition on any application has been made, nor evidence presented, just erroneous assumptions. 3 town councilors are former planning and zoning commissioners, and you know that exclusionary zoning and racial inequality have long histories in zoning, and only by knowing this history can the PZC do better for all residents. To disqualify nominees because they are knowledgeable of the history of zoning and the need for affordable housing is to handicap the commission. You also know full well the difference between a commissioner having an opinion on a planning issue versus a predisposition or bias problem. I am disappointed that I have not heard from any of you on these issues, and it's time to speak up. Quite frankly, and as respectfully as this can be said, Ms. Ingalls, you don't know what you're talking about. Being ignorant can be forgivable, however. To bully pulpit someone from a place of ignorance is not. According to the statements in the day, these screenshots were received in the summer of 2021. I was chair of PZC at that time. Never did Ms. Ingalls ask me about these. Ms. Ingalls did not consult town staff about these. Ms. Ingalls refused to question Ms. Evans about these statements at any time during the nomination process. Ms. Ingalls systematically refused any opportunity to understand statements and denied any opportunity for Ms. Evans to defend herself. It is obvious to an impartial observer that Ms. Ingalls must be removed from the administration committee. I do not understand how any nominee can be expected to be treated fairly and reasonably by Ms. Ingalls, or what information or evidence she will conjure up to use against a nominee. Find her a committee where she'll cause less damage to our volunteers. How many more times does this council wish to appear in the newspaper because of one member's inability to ask questions and listen instead of leaping to conclusions? This council also must address the newly appointed Councilor Irwin's comments. In Ledyard, we choose nominees based on the qualifications, not on the letter at the end of their name. Fix this ugly mess, reappoint Ms. Evans, and remove Ms. Ingalls from the admin committee. Thank you.
Thank you for comments. Woody. Would anybody else like to address the council? Or any other residents? Ms. Cruz-Glacken.
Good evening, Nicole Cruz-Glacken, 5 Allen Lane, Gales Ferry. I just wanted to come tonight to say how deeply troubling it was to see the post from Mr. Alt. I understand that his name has been withdrawn, but I've heard comments about competency, and I just want to state that in a candidate questionnaire, Councilor Irwin made a comment that referred to basically not sacrificing competency for diversity when it comes to district hires for our schools. And looking at Mr. Alt's post, I am now wondering if Councilor Irwin feels like this is an opportunity to state that he does in fact not agree with the sentiments that Mr. Alt posted. And when it comes down to a liability, I also saw on his application that Mr. Alt is trying to volunteer for the Gales Ferry Fire Department. As a woman of color and the daughter of a Muslim man, that's frightening. He should not be answering phone calls, and he absolutely should not be showing up to anyone's homes. And if all the counselors here do indeed have the people's best interests at heart, I would think it would be an easy task to say that you denounce these sentiments and that you do not agree with them, and that someone who expresses the things that he has expressed has no place serving our community in any capacity. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else like to address the council? Mr. Treacher.
Thank you. As some of you know, I was on the zoning commission from 1987 to the end of 2012. And our final set of regulations had allowed for land lease communities, mobile home parks. Stonegate Village was developed under those regulations. Stonegate Village was a large affordable housing project. And after the commissions were merged, the planning commission and the zoning commission were merged, those regulations were deleted, which removed a set of our regulations that were specifically intended to encourage affordable housing, land lease communities. I still encourage those. It should be noted that Stonegate Village is at one time, and it might still be, the 10th largest taxpayer in Ledyard. The other thing I would like to say is that I am not aware of anything in the zoning regulations that are discriminatory based upon race, nothing whatsoever. They are scrutinized exhaustively for these types of problems, and they simply do not exist. So I just want to make that statement that the regulations are good. And the second thing that's coming up is the new enabling statutes will make accessory dwelling units mandatory, the right to build accessory dwelling units as a detached structure in people's backyards, which could be mobile homes, will become law at the end of this year, unless the town opts out. The zoning commission is not obligated to, but it has the right to conduct a public hearing to decide if the town should opt out of allowing accessory dwelling units in people's backyards on single family lots. I'm in favor of affordable housing, but I'm in favor of affordable housing. I'm in favor of attached dwelling units, duplexes and triplexes and so forth, but I'm not in favor of mobile homes in people's backyards. And I urge that the powers that be address the Planning and Zoning Commission to encourage them to have a public hearing to get a feel of what the public wants as far as accessory dwelling units on single family lots in our town. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does anybody else like to address the council? Hearing none, or seeing none, I should say. I have no committee, commission, board reports, comments to town councils. Any council like to make any comments? Naomi?
This is not for a board report, but I just want to remind the public that the Linda Davis Celebration of Life ceremony is Saturday, April 2nd at Ledyard High School. The time and details will be posted on the Ledyard Community Resource page at a later time. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that.
Thank you. Any other councilors like to make comment? Okay. For those who have commented tonight, I hear what you're saying. I do not disagree. I will say that with Mr. Alt's postings, I did find offensive. And his withdrawal from being considered, I did talk to him and told him that he should be withdrawing from any application to be working with the town. As far as with the Gales Ferry Fire Department, his application there, I will reach out to Chief Saccone and talk to him about that. That's really all I can do. I'm not sure if I can even really be involved, but I will talk to Chief Saccone on that. But thank you for your comments. We will take them under consideration and moving forward. Communication, review and approval of prior meeting minutes. Would somebody like to make the motion?
I move to approve the regular meeting minutes of January 12th, 2022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, corrections, deletions?
There's a correction that needs to be made on page 5, the second line. It says a 5% local match in the amount of, and the dollar amount should be $3,570.78. The 5 is missing in the dollar amount.
Thank you. You have that, Roxanne?
Good catch.
Good catch. Thank you. Any other comments? Roxanne, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. No referrals. Council Subcommittee Liaison Reports, Administration Committee.
Okay.
The admin committee held its regular meeting on January 12th via Zoom. I will follow up on two issues. First, regarding Mr. Alt's application for Historic District Commission and Planning and Zoning. A resident made us aware of the applicant's social media, and rightly so. We were not aware. That evening, I emailed the RTC nominating committee chair, Jamie Allen, and asked that she confirm whether this is the same person, and if so, to please revet the application. Ms. Allen sent us an email. I will read her email into the record. January 24th, 2020, to the Administration Committee, RE Terry Alt. Committee, on behalf of the Ledyard RTC Nominating Committee regarding Mr. Terry Alt of 3 Vinegar Hill Road in Gales Ferry for a position on the P&Z Commission and his second choice of Historic District Commission. It came to our attention that Mr. Alt expressed views on his social media page that do not align with the values of the RTC. Therefore, we officially withdraw our endorsement. Jamie Allen. Organized here. As Councilor Dombrowski shared, Mr. Alt has withdrawn his application. His endorsement is also withdrawn. He is no longer being considered. Next, regarding the minority representation question, the question at hand is, does minority representation apply to the entire commission as one body, or does it apply to the regularly seated members as one body and the alternate members as their own body? Mayor Allen reached out to Paula Anthony, our town attorney. Her opinion, her written opinion, is included in the agenda packet. I encourage you to read it. It's not terribly long and it is reasonably easy to understand. She mentions inconsistent Attorney General opinions from years past, and in her words, the issue is far from settled. She also notes that the Connecticut Town Clerks Association is being told by the Secretary of State that alternates of both zoning boards of appeals and planning and zoning commissions must be treated as separate bodies for purposes of minority representation. Again, I recommend you read it yourself, but I'm just going to read the conclusion here. So her conclusion is, accordingly, based on the PZC's current composition, the town council is not restricted by Connecticut General Statute 9167A and can appoint a commissioner of its choosing, regardless of the appointee's political affiliation, to fill the unexpired term of the vacating regular member. However, applying the above analysis with regard to the unexpired alternate vacancy, alternates are currently at maximum capacity of the majority party with 2 Republicans. So the minority representation statute is triggered and the town council has to appoint a Democrat. So presently there are 2 vacancies, a regular seat and an alternate seat. Another possibility is that one of the alternates move into the regular seat, then we see 2 new alternates. Either way, it seems prudent to have both parties represented in the alternate pool, and we will be working on that. The next admin meeting is Wednesday, February 9th at 5 p.m. via Zoom. There are 2 appointments on the agenda tonight, and that is my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for admin? Seeing none, community relations.
Good evening, councilors. Community relations, we met on Wednesday, January 19th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. We did have one resident speak at this meeting. She was concerned. What she said was racist behavior towards people. She is a member, or she is on the Youth and Social Services Board, and she felt there was discrimination by her. She did bring up some things that she believed shouldn't be tolerated. Councilor Soms had asked that she would bring this. These were social media posts and things like that. So we did ask if we could get some screenshots of that. And we did agree that we would talk about this issue some more moving forward. We also talked in light of that about what the Community Relations Committee was going to do moving forward. One of the things that we discussed during our meeting was the listening aspect. We want to make sure that people are being heard. And in that, we decided that we wanted to expand a little bit on our informational sessions where we can bring, like, say, the fire department, the police department, public works department. We wanted to be able to have some informational forums and more of them, and maybe possibly scheduling them maybe, like, say, twice a year or something like that. We also talked about setting up informal venues, meaning that we would engage residents. It's hard to do because obviously we have to post and we have minutes and everything. And Councilor Sanz brought up that we may be able to do what's called field walks, where we would be able to post these field walks. They could be at say the pub, one of our town green or parks, or even the up and down Sawmill. And we could post that, and the public would be invited, and it would give a chance for residents in a more informal setting to be able to talk. And we feel that might be something worth doing as well. We also wanted to engage the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation and see if we can get them on a more informal basis too, to keep relations going there. So these are things that we want to start working on. And we also want to develop a new mission statement moving forward that will encompass what we want to do. And these are the things that we're going to start working on at our next meeting, which will be February 16th, 2022. And that is my report.
Thank you, Councilor Paul. Any questions for community relations? Finance.
All right, Councilor Ryan, I'll be giving the report for Bill Solms, who is absent. As written, the Town Council Finance Committee held its regular meeting on Wednesday, January 19th, 2022 at 5 p.m. by video conference. Nicoletta McTeague presented the town's 2020-21 audit report by the town's auditing firm, Clifton Larson Allen. The meeting was attended by several council and board members, the mayor, and the superintendent of schools. The audit contains several recommendations, one of which is also being addressed, and for the first time, no findings, deficiencies, or material weaknesses. As it has in past year, the town will respond in writing to CLA regarding the recommendations. Additionally, the total revenues and transfers in were lower than budgetary estimates by $766,000, but expenditures were $1.4 million lower than budgeted appropriations, generally due to budgetary compliance in every expenditure. Bond liabilities decreased slightly and the undesignated fund balance increased slightly to 7%. The town's goal is increase the undesignated fund to at least 10%, which lowers future bonding costs. The best news is that due to stock market increases, the town's remaining pension obligations decreased from $5 million on June 30th, 2020 to a net $100,000 to the positive, meaning the town can fulfill all of its pension obligations and have $100,000 left over. This could change if the market reverses itself, but as of now, it reflects a highly successful long-term effort to catch up, highly successful effort to catch up with our pension funding, which was far behind where it should have been 15 years ago. Finance Director Marcia Hancock thanked the CLA for their work, noting that she has been pleased with the results, and again introduced Ledyard's new Finance Director, Matt Bonin. Marcia's last day was January 20th, but she will continue to assist with the budget process for the coming year. Mr. Bonin reported that halfway through the current fiscal year, town income presently exceeds budgetary revenue, and expenses are running below budget. The committee continued to discuss the ARPA funding project list, including a date for a public information session to get input from residents and taxpayers, possibly in February. The committee also discussed a possible set of criteria for project funding and prioritization, such as direct cost of pandemic, unavoidable present or future cost, increased public safety, benefit to all taxpayers and residents, benefit to residents, taxpayers in need, support economic development, and saves the town money. The committee tabled a motion to approve a refund for Mr. Paul Muggle, having only recently received additional supporting documentation at the start of the meeting. The committee also tabled a motion to transfer $75,000 from the undesignated fund to increase the town match portion of the town green upgrade project. Costs to complete the project have gone up as much as 20% for some portions due to increases in contractor costs related to the pandemic. The committee would like to explore the use of ARPA funds if possible, and is awaiting more information about whether that is permissible under federal and state grant funding guidelines. Everything else is on the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. Any questions for finance? Land use and planning, public works, Councilor Paul.
No new report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for land use? Liaison reports. Mary, go ahead.
Okay, the Youth and Social Services Board met on January 18th. They reported that the Juvenile Review Board has 2 open cases. They are handling some truancy cases. They have 62 active cases for family counseling and 57 waiting for appointments. They are interviewing master's degree candidates from URI for the next semester. They approved new offices for the coming year. And the food pantry, I'll say, is humming. They give statistics, but they change by the day, but all is well.
Thank you. Any other liaison reports? Councilor Irwin.
Yes, the Board of Education met last week. Things that we care about. There will be a public hearing next week, Wednesday, the 2nd at 7 p.m. online for the school's budget next year. And then COVID contact tracing has been discontinued per guidance from the Connecticut Department of Public Health. Rates in the schools have been declining since the Christmas break. And that's my report for the Board of Education.
Thank you. Any questions? Any other liaison reports? Seeing none, mayor's report.
Good evening, everybody. Just really quick on the COVID front, we're averaging 240 new cases a week right now over the last 2 weeks. That's about 20 cases below the Ledge-Lite Health District service area on a weekly basis. Our caseload for the Ledge-Lite Health District appears to have peaked on January 8th at about 2,652 cases a week, which happens to just be 3 days earlier than the very same peak a year before. Hospitalizations in New London County are at 105 right now, also down from their peak of 116 in the last 10 days. Vaccination wise, the town as a whole is at 70.5%, which is still 3 percentage points higher than the New London County rate. We have our final N95 and COVID test kit distribution coming from the state of Connecticut this Friday. The state is not going to continue with those distributions, so this is it. And per the governor's order, this distribution is only for critical needs, distributing, and we'll be distributing through the Ledger VNA, through the senior center to our first responders, municipal employees, and K through 12 schools on a needs basis. We are holding our first budget meetings with department heads starting next week. And then I will start my full budget review once I meet with each of them. Let me just back up one. I would also note too that there's a transition for COVID testing right now. SEMA 4 is ceasing operations in Connecticut. There are 2 different companies that will be taking over. Quest is one of them, and Transitional Healthcare, I believe, is the other one. So they're going to start the following day after SEMA 4 is finished at the end of this month. And also of note, vaccinations are down pretty dramatically. So Ledge-Lite is dialing back on the vaccination clinics that they've been doing. They are giving vaccine shots to not more than 50% of what they have readily available. So it's really diminished. And lastly, they too are ending contact tracing. CDC guidelines are changing pretty dramatically on that as well. So they will only be contact tracing on large group events and kind of like mass situations. So not the usual day-to-day operations. Our budget work right now is going pretty smoothly in ClearGov. As you know, we have the online budget tool now that is it's pretty transparent, generally very transparent for the public facing, and it's also got an internal facing side. So instead of us inputting our budgets into Munis, then transferring it to Excel and then on to another platform, we are now just going right into ClearGov with these budgets, and each department head has their own access and audit trail. So it's great to see where the changes are occurring. Good news on our grand list so far. Preliminarily, our grand list is up 0.52% as a whole. Personal property increased a net of 5.71%. And for those of you that get motor vehicle tax bills, and I am one of them, you would know that motor vehicles increased by a net of 20.5%. So the used car market, it's almost shocking to open that bill and see that you're paying more in taxes this year than you were last year for a car that's a year older. But that is the state of the used car market right now because of the chip shortage and the inability to provide the vehicles. So, and then just last really quick, our LOTSIP grant, which is the multimodal path from Ledyard Center to the high school, won its final approval from the Council of Governments. The Council of Governments is the overseeing authority for the LOTSIP grants. It was approved at their full meeting last Wednesday, and it is now off to DOT for their final sign off. The project cost increased by about $200,000. DOT gets a look at the project as we present it, and then their engineers look to maybe re-engineer or more robustly engineer some of our proposed work. So it added about $200,000. However, all of that money is coming out of the grant, so it has nothing to do with town funds. But the good news is the design now is exactly the way DOT wanted it to be. So for the grant now to go to DOT, it should generally just be a rubber stamp, and then we are 100% final on that. And we're expecting to break ground in the spring. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any comments or questions to the mayor? Hearing none. Okay, we have no old business. Would anybody like to amend the agenda under new business? Hearing none. Item number 1, admin.
I make a motion to appoint Ms. Arlene Brown, R. 259 Gallop Hill Road, Ledyard, to the Senior Citizens Commission to complete a 2-year term ending December 9th, 2023, filling a vacancy left by Ms. Dougherty.
Second, Counselor Irwin.
Thank you. Discussion?
Ms. Brown put in her application. She would like to start, she would just like to start serving on a town commission, and this is a good place to start.
Any other questions, comments? Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Sorry, yes.
you're muted. There you go. Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
and Mrs. McGrattan.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I make a motion to appoint Ms. Marcia Dykes, R. 977 Shoeville Road, Ledyard, to the Senior Citizens Commission to complete a 2-year term ending December 9th, 2023, filling a vacancy left by Ms. Winston.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Discussion?
Ms. Dykes runs the Ledyard Clothing Exchange and would like to continue her community service.
Any questions, discussion? Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Engel,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
I make a motion to set a virtual video conference public hearing on Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022 at 6:30 PM to receive comments and recommendations regarding the following. 1, proposed amendments to ordinance number 300-009, an ordinance establishing citations for zoning violations and short-term rental noncompliance as contained in the
No.
draft dated January
No.
5th, 2022. I'm sorry, Rox, are you saying something?
Yeah, that short-term rental language is not supposed to be in there. I don't know why it is. I keep
Okay.
taking it out.
Okay.
It doesn't
thank-
have anything, it's just for citations.
Okay.
Don't,
It makes much more sense. Thank you. Okay, 2, proposed amendments to ordinance 300-022, an ordinance establishing an agricultural commission for the town of Ledyard as contained in the draft dated November 15th, 2021. 3, proposed new an ordinance regarding voting district boundaries.
There a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
This is just setting a date for a public hearing.
Any questions? Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item, finance.
All right. I move to appropriate $43,270 from the American Rescue Plan Act funding to account number 2109-0305, TAC 53300, TAC G0014, as requested by Ledge Light Health District to support initiatives related to the COVID pandemic.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
So, well, I don't want to jump on this, Andra, if you had anything you wanted to say first.
Well, I actually, Naomi has a statement that Bill Psalm provided to read. into the
Oh,
record.
perfect. Okay.
Counselor Psalm sent the statement for me to read to the town council. He says, here are the reasons I support Ledge Light's funding request. Number 1, the pandemic has increased costs to all of us, individuals, businesses, municipalities, and healthcare. 2, LLHD is a perfect example of regionalization, and in the end, they save towns the cost of funding their own health inspectors and other staff. Number 3, LLHD has incurred additional cost as a result of the COVID pandemic, and there is no guarantee that the pandemic is over or that it is the last pandemic we will experience. Number 4, we need to invest in preventing future pandemics and educating the public to avoid a repeat of the current pandemic and the amount of time it's taken to get it under control. Number 5, no other towns have rejected LLHD's request for funding. 6, each member town has the right to vote to leave the health district, which helps to ensure the health district controls expenses. Lastly, number 7, member towns have seen minimal cost increases from LLHD in recent years. Thank you for considering these items. I'm sorry to miss this week's meeting. Bill Psalms.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So I know Counselor Ryan is going to say a few things. This sat in finance for a little while, in part because when Jen Muggio from Ledge Light first approached finance, I think it was back in September, the part of her request was actually not forwarded to the entire finance committee, and Counselor Psalms was not aware of that. So it took a while for us to compile our questions, get them back to her, and then get them answered. And she was very gracious with updating information and answering our questions. There's just a question, and Councilor Ryan is going to speak to this better than I can, just about using one-time funds for ongoing expenses. So I'll let him, continue with those thoughts.
All right. So first of all, Naomi, thank you for reading Bill's comments. I was glad to, wish I had seen those previously. I do echo his comments that I do feel it's incumbent as a member or as a member municipality in the legislative district that we do pay our fair share. According to feedback that the Finance Committee has received, that no other municipality has pushed back on funding their 1%. That, however, still does not mean we have to do it, but it's a good indicator that other municipalities have seen the value in this. That said, I am inclined to vote in favor of this tonight, but I do want to state that one of my clear and consistent criterion for ARPA funding has been that it not be used to create new recurring expenses that, once the ARPA funding is exhausted, become an additional recurring liability for the town. Or if that they do, we understand completely the strategic financial impact to the town. And we've been able to reconcile that within our current budgetary plans and constraints. Light has graciously offered up data and information and has stated that while some of the ARPA funding will be used to create additional positions, they have also stated that these positions will not constitute an additional financial burden on municipalities once the ARPA funding is exhausted. And as I understand it, this is going to be accomplished through attrition and moving job roles, et cetera. But in general, there will not be these expenses that are being funded by the ARPA funds will not become an additional line item in their funding request to Ledyard after that funding is exhausted. So with that condition, I am inclined to vote in favor.
Any other comments? Hearing none, Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
Yes.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
All right. I move to approve. Approve to appropriate or move to appropriate. What should that be, Roxanne?
You can approve to appropriate.
Okay, I move to approve to appropriate $6,500 received from the sale of surplus items through Gov Deals to account number 210200101 TAC 55248 Police Forfeiture Reserve Account.
Second.
Discussion.
I can add something here if you'd like.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
So this was a 2008 Cadillac Escalade that was seized as the result of a fentanyl drug bust that occurred in the town of Ledyard about 3 years ago. And we had to go through quite a process to be able to retain and get title to the seized asset. So that asset finally was titled by the state of Connecticut in the town of Ledyard's name, and we put it up on Gov Deals and sold it for the $6,500 bid. The dollars from seizures have to go into specific fund usages for the police, for continued drug work and prevention programs. So that's what this is.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering how we got into Cadillac Escalade.
It's not our normal daily driver.
That's right. Any comments or questions? Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Ingles,
Yes.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
yes,
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Next item.
All right, I move to adopt proposed amendments to ordinance number 200, tax 001, revision 1, an ordinance for purchasing as contained in the draft dated October 26, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Sorry.
Discussion?
So this is the ordinance that needs the language added about federal grant guidelines.
And, okay, yeah, this was from the public hearing early tonight.
Right. I think it's just worth stating that, it's substantially unchanged except for that federal language.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? Roxanne, please call the roll.
Mr. Irwin,
Yes.
Mr. Marshall,
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan,
yes,
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingles.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Would anybody like to make the next motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I adjourn this meeting without exception. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night.
Have a good
Good night.
evening.
Good meeting.